especially when you get to a point where you know that you are a highly weaponized spiritual being in a human body, and you can hurt your opponent physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And then you start to look for ways not to fight, because if you can resolve something and dissolve it without physical violence, then at least you don't have a physical casualty or physical injuries as a consequence of that conflict. Keep working at it and keep asking those questions. Ask those two simple questions. Where's the love in it? Where's the love in it? Where's the love in it?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Martial Mind Power podcast. I'm Jatinder and with me I have Sifu Lak, and again we're going to be chatting to you about Martial Mind Power and sharing lots of wisdom bombs. So, Sifu Lak, how are you doing?
Doing very well, man. Doing very well. How are you?
Good, thank you. Good, thank you. I'm looking forward to it today because we're going to go back to the amazing the art of thinking without thinking. And
you're thinking there. You see, I know. and you got it wrong.
Exactly. It's funny that, isn't it? When like consciously trying to think of something, it just sometimes goes pear-shaped. It's better to just flow with it at times, right? So, yes, awesome. We're going to go through the book as we usually do, just randomly flick the pages. And when you're ready, you can say stop.
No, I think you should stop when you're ready to stop.
Oh, okay. Stop. Let's see where we got. Okay. I have to go. It's a blank page. I have to go back one. Okay. Here we go. When you know how to fight, you find a way not to.
Oh, what page are you on?
That is page 60.
Ah, yeah. There we go. There we go. Let me show everyone the image.
It's a pair of boxing gloves on the table with nobody wearing them.
Okay.
Fantastic.
All right. Good. All right, man. So let's crack on with this one then, yeah?
So absolutely, man. So what comes to mind with this one is an interesting one, actually. I remember when I used to do martial arts and we were sitting down in the class and my instructor said to me, this was just when I had just managed to get one of my black belts, right? And he sat down and he was asking the students about, what the colors meant and whatnot. And he was talking about how when you're a white belt, it's like you haven't got any kind of it's like knowledge, purity kind of thing, right? And when you get to a black belt, it's almost like you've gone through the range of colors and you got to a stage now where you've learned those processes to get you there. And he said to me, how do you feel? And I said, I feel okay. And the conversation he took it to was about how he said that, you've learned, he said, why did you start learning martial arts originally? And I said, because I wanted to learn how to fight. And he said, now how do you feel about it? And I said, I'm okay. I don't need to fight. I don't want to fight, kind of thing, And that's what he was trying to allude to say, well, you've learned how to fight, but you're choosing not to fight. Yeah. So that's what this topic reminds me of as I read it without thinking.
That's wonderful because therein lies the secret. Is that when you start off on the martial journey, imagine yourself as a blunt sword. Okay. And as you start to cultivate your skills as a martial artist, you're sharpening that sword, right? And that sword is only going to start to get sharper and sharper and sharper. Now, a black belt, when you first get the first black belt, it just shows that, you've understood how to sharpen your sword. But the sword sharpening continues, and the sword continues to get sharper over time. And it's not until you kind of get further down the dance, for instance, that you really start to become an embodiment of that sharpness. Yeah. And then, when you're put in a situation where you've got a um, you've got a choice to make, and that choice is how are you going to respond to that situation. Now, there will be some situations where you need to incapacitate your opponent physically. Okay. And there's just some situations that necessitate that. There is no other option, right? But the choice is how. Okay. And there are other situations where you have a choice to not use a physical response, but a mental and emotional response, which is imbued with high spirit. And how do you do that? And ultimately, when you know that you are at the point where you are a lethal weapon, you are razor sharp, you think twice about and unleashing that sword from its sheath. Okay, and when you do that, you now have a conscious. Now you start to act consciously, because now you understand that if I unsheath my sword, and we spoke about this in one of the previous podcasts, that there is this adage that says that, when you unsheath a sword, then that sword demands blood, and that blood could be your opponent's blood, and it could be yours as well, or it could be yours, because you'll also get hurt in the process if you're not careful, right? And even if you are careful, you get hurt in the process. It's not about being diligent; it's about consequence. Okay, and as a result, you start to realize actually the highest form of fighting is the art of fighting without fighting. And then you start to look for ways not to fight, because if you can resolve something and dissolve it without physical violence, then at least you don't have a physical casualty or physical injuries as a consequence of that conflict. Rather, you may be left with a mental casualty, a mental injuries that, although not physical, still need healing. Not the same. Okay, why? Let's just say you do get into an argument, right? Let's say it's not physical, it's purely verbal, right? After any kind of verbal argument, there's regret and shame, right? Once you start to look past the ego, okay? The ego is the one that first said, oh, I should have done this, I should have done that, I could have done this, I could have done that. And that's just all nonsense. Once you transcend and rise above that, and beyond that is regret and shame. Regret and shame is really a regret and shame that you didn't put your best side forwards, that you put your low side forwards. You could have put your high side forwards, and your high side could have been, you could have handled that with more decorum. You could have handled that with honor and a respect towards the other person, right? You could have handled that with sensitivity. You could have handled that with love and compassion, right? Very hard to do, because you have to learn and cultivate yourself to get there. And then sometimes you may make a mistake. That means you need to learn from that so you can keep rising. So it's a constant, rising, or should I say, sharpening the sword, sharpening the sword, sharpening the sword, right? And therein, ultimately, you want to find a way not to do that, especially when you get to a point where you know that you are a highly weaponized spiritual being in a human body, and you can hurt your opponent physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, right? Let's just say you can hurt all of those existences within our not self, right? And if that is the case, then you want to look for ways not to hurt anybody at all, right? And that takes a lot of self-control. It takes self-realization. And there's also a realization that, when you hurt the other person, you're going to hurt yourself too. Why? Because there is a consequence and karma, right, associated with everything that you do. We did a podcast on karma specifically, and we spoke about how karma means action and also inaction. But let's just, collectively talk about karma as action, including inaction. That when you do something that has an adverse effect on someone and hurt somebody, it's going to hurt you. It's going to come back to hurt you. You've got to pay the price. Right. So, if you can find a way to neutralize that, it's ultimately the best way. But you have to exercise a lot of self-control. Okay.
Absolutely, man. You know what comes to mind is that famous scene from Enter the Dragon when Bruce Lee's on the boat and this gentleman comes up to him and says, "So, what's your style?" And Bruce Lee looks at him and says, "My style? My style is the art of fighting without fighting, right?" And the gentleman goes, "What do you mean, the art of fighting without fighting?" He says, "Show me." And Bruce like steps back a minute and says, "Don't you think we need a bit more space?" And the gentleman's like, "Okay, what do you suggest?" And he said, "That island over there, right? We'll go there. We'll take that little boat and then we can, show you there." The guy goes, "Okay, no problem." So Bruce leads him towards this little side boat because they're on this ship, little sailing ship at the moment, and they're going somewhere. So they're in the sea. And Bruce leads him up to the little boat and he's like untying it and just, kind of echo him to go towards the little boat. So the guy goes and sits in the boat. And as the guy sits in the boat, Bruce just unleashes the rope. So the boat drifts away into the distance. And everybody sees this and starts laughing. So it was basically a case of he won that fight without actually fighting and using his intellect and skills of persuasion in that manner. So that's the classic example that comes to mind, right? That he found a way not to fight this person and still win because the other guy looked like a fool in the process, and everybody else just he gained respect in that moment as well. If you watch that film.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And, that's, that just shows when you've got, that specific scene, actually, the gentleman that's looking for a fight, he's obviously impatient, obviously got a massive ego and bravado, and wants to prove himself and can't wait for the tournament. That is the setting for the tournament that happens on Han Island, right? And sometimes you have to deal with what I would call an ignoramus like that, because there's no reason, right, or logic there, but there's always a way to do it, and you have to think wide and far without limitation when it comes to how can you kind of cope. And not just cope, but also resolve the issue and dissolve the issue at hand. So yeah, absolutely. Daniel Inosanto, Dan Inosanto, as he's often referred to, was one of Bruce's closest confidants. He ran the LA Chinatown School when Bruce had moved down to that region. And he, Dan spoke about the highest expression of martial arts being love, and that if love is the highest expression of martial arts, then why do you need to fight, essentially, physically, that is. And it's a really powerful sentiment, which I often say, the reason people fight is for love. And if you're fighting for love, and I often I have this conversation that you fight for the love of the self, right, which is love of the ego, right, which is most often the case because somebody's been rude to you and your ego's gone, I need to fight back on this, right? So love of the ego, right, and your ego is responding, right? And also the love of the self is also the love of the self-preservation of your body as well, potentially, right? Because you might be physically at home. It's a love of something, and these are things like possessions. Okay, maybe you love your car and somebody scratched it. Maybe you love your clothes and somebody snagged a thread out of it and you got upset or just spilt something on it, whatever it might be, right? So it's a love of something. Okay, it doesn't have to be clothes and cars. It can be anything that's not you, basically. And then the love of someone, right? It could be your partner, could be your children, a loved one, a family member, a close friend, a fellow human being, right? So these are the three reasons why people would fight, right? And through the love for these things, okay? And if love is really the reason why you're fighting, then the only thing that can resolve the issue in the first place is if you're fighting for love is through love. So find the love in it and show the love in it, because people are scared to show the love. And it sounds obvious. You think, that's a, no shit Sherlock freaking moment there, but it's that simple. But the thing is, Dan once taught this teaching to my instructor, and he said, can you describe JKD? He said the good thing about JKD is it's simple. The bad thing about JKD is simple. JKD being Bruce's martial art Jeet Kune Do. And the point that he was trying to make was that our minds naturally overcomplicate things, right? And make a mess out of it, right? And really start to convolute things. But actually, the idea is to make it simple and easy, effortless, buoyant, right? Always come back to that effortless ease and buoyancy, right? So we need to kind of cultivate our minds to simplify things and make them easy to manage, right? And if that's the case, then if you're fighting for love, then express the love, for God's sake, right? Why don't you just, if you're fighting because you love someone, why don't you tell them that you love them? Why are you not saying the thing that it's about? Because that will dissolve it in the first place. You think the other person is going to be angry at you for expressing a heartfelt sentiment? Of course not. They'll actually learn to relate to why you're getting upset, because it's through love and care and support and protection and all of those kind of things that are expressions of love, right? And usually it will do the trick. But you need to obviously be intelligent enough to say it in a way that it will connect with the other person, that they will resonate with it, that they'll feel the connection to what you're saying, and also feel what you're feeling, and sometimes, in some cases, see what you're seeing. And when they start to kind of embody the reasons why you're doing what you're doing, and the frustrations around certain conflict, it starts to dissolve, right?
It's funny because as you're sharing that, like I'm going back in my mind thinking about times where I've become aware of these things and how I became aware of something, right? And I'm just going back into like the martial arts school again, and I just remember like being there and seeing people of different backgrounds, different families, different people coming, and you can see different characters all behaving in a different way, doing different things, and it makes you wonder. Like, you sit there sometimes, and say, why is this person like this? Why is this person like that? Why is this person behaving in a certain way, right? And then when you're in that environment, you're being taught these things. You're being taught how to hone your aggression. You're being taught how to punch, how to put anger behind it, ki and all these kind of things, and manage your emotion around it. Yeah, you're taught to fight, but you're being also taught how to defend yourself and only to fight when you need to fight, right? Yeah. So where I'm getting to is that sometimes what happens is that people are not aware of these things. They don't even know they exist, right? Until something happens or they're shown that path. Yeah. And it's only in those kind of moments when somebody has that like conscious moment where they think about it and think, hang on a minute, what is this that they're showing me? You're telling me I can actually manage my emotions. You're telling me I don't have to be angry, that I can actually channel my anger in a particular way. And I find it interesting, like that dynamic, because I think those things are required where like something happens that makes you contemplate, or then somebody shows you that, hang on a minute, you can do it like this as well.
Yeah.
Right. And that's where I feel that, you know, the martial art instructor, that your kind of environment, your upbringing, all these things come into play, because as a child, you're kind of just empty canvas, right? And as you're growing up, you're getting influences of all these different things, depending through the environment through which you've come. You may
Yeah.
not know certain things, and you may not know that, hang on, there's other ways to do stuff.
Yeah.
And so I was just sharing that, like, it's important for people to, you know, be in those environments where they're actually able to learn and cultivate these things as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and you know the other thing, fundamentally, if we're going to take this whole idea of when you know how to fight, you find a way not to, is the reason why people want to fight in the first place, or should I say, the reason why people want to learn how to fight. Right. So you take it right to the source, those people that have actually taken a conscious decision, right, to actually learn a martial art in order to cultivate their skills as a weaponized being, right? And why that is, and is this is a good point where I can actually read the actual koan from the book, because this is the other aspect of the teaching that is really potent, and this is from direct experience that I've had over 16 odd years of teaching, and or longer than that. And you know, I've written here 95% of martial arts students I train turned to martial arts because they needed to heal something, such as, in brackets, but not limited to, close bracket, 1, childhood trauma, 2, bullying at home, school, and or work, 3, assault, 4, fear of not being able to protect themselves or loved ones, 5, stress at home, school, and or work, 6, lack of clarity and structure in their life and living environments, 7, conflicts at home, school, and or work, 8, living in a dangerous area, 9, fear of large groups of people, 10, no role model or mentor in their life to guide them. The remaining 5% are simply in it to, number 1, get fit and healthy, number 2, socialize, 3, prevent boredom by taking up a hobby. And these are all perfectly good reasons to take up martial arts too. As you learn martial arts, you will notice how you will start to heal over time with prolonged practice and perseverance, as you learn how to injure, maim, disable, or even kill somebody with deadly martial arts techniques. Remember, the clue is in the name martial arts. Martial means warlike, or to destroy and break. Art means to create, heal, and love, which is a higher state of martial arts. So when you eventually learn how to fight effectively, you will look for every reason not to. Right? So the motivation why people are learning really is the key point that I wanted to try and make there. And I thought, you know, it's important to just read verbatim what's written in this koan, because it literally hits a nail on the head. And it's through trauma, right? Through trauma. And it's trauma that's caused by love for one of those three things: the self, something else outside of you, or someone else. Okay. And that's it. So you can categorize all of those 10 points in that, right? So let's just say childhood trauma, right? That's for the love of the self, right? Or should I say lack of the love of the self, all right? Because that's, again, love related. It's just the absence of it. But they know there's an absence of it, right? You think somebody that hasn't never experienced love in life doesn't know what it is? Of course they do, but they want it after a certain amount of awareness, right? You have to become aware of it. If you're in denial, you're never going to know. You can carry on behaving as you are unconsciously, right? And when I mean unconsciously, I don't mean subconsciously. I mean unconsciously, as in unknowingly, right? In the, let's just say, the unresourceful ways that you're used to. Two, bullying, for instance. Again, love of the self, right? Same. Number one, assault, love of the self. Fear of not being able to protect themselves or loved ones. This is someone else. This was number three, right? Stress at home, school, or work. Ego, number one, again, right? Six, lack of clarity and structure in their life and living environments, right? That's your surroundings, right? That's number two, right? For something. Seven, conflicts at home, school, and or work. Again, love the self, right? Living in a dangerous area, one and two, right? Love of the self, right? And love of something potentially, okay? Something nice you got that could get damaged, right? Something nice you're carrying could get damaged. You wear a nice pair of Nike Air Jordans, right? Jordan ones, and someone freaking mugs you for them, right? And you're walking home barefoot, right? Or in a dirty pair of socks because someone's nicked your shoes. And number nine, fear of large group of people. Again, love of yourself or love of someone else because and number three as well, or love of something else. All three could be at risk, right? And number 10, no role model or mentor in the life to guide them. Again, love of the self or love of someone, right? So again, it is all related around those three things. And it's really hard to always ask the question, where is the love in it? That's really the $1 million question here. Where's the love in it? Especially when you're in a confrontational situation or conflict situation, and it's a way of becoming. And when I say becoming, is becoming, okay, and coming in the sense that you haven't quite arrived there yet. Your arrival is in flight, okay? You are getting there, so to speak, and it just takes work. You got to keep working at it. So the first thing that happens is, right, you'll be in a situation, you'll be like, oh well, Sifu Lak said this, but I missed my opportunity there. Okay, great. Well, you recognize that there was an opportunity there where you could have applied something. Now, next time it happens, right, see if you can just pause yourself for a moment and think, okay, where's the love in it, right? Something else happens. And again, you react unresourcefully. And you're like, shit, man, Sifu Lak said this, is really hard to do now. It's all, rubbish, right? And again, awareness kicks in that right, in your heart of hearts, deep within your core, that there's an action that you needed to take, but you were going too fast and you need to break that pattern of behavior, and slowly you need to break it, right? Until you can get to a point where something happens and all of a sudden it's like, I see the thing that the love where you're coming from and why you feel that's being violated, or why you think there's some contradiction to that. And let me set that straight. Let me realign that. Let me bring that back into alignment with one another, so that we can kind of resolve and dissolve this conflict now. Now, all of a sudden, you don't need to fight anymore. Okay. So there's that whole aspect of things, right? And we haven't even got into the whole how you communicate that part of it, because that's a whole new conversation, which I don't want to get into right now, because that's a whole new topic for a whole different podcast, because that is human communication is a massive topic, right, in its own right. And that's a very complicated topic as well, because there's so many aspects to it. But just to kind of give you a little high level on it, is verbal and non-verbal, right? Just to at least give you some reference pointers on that side. So yeah, it's interesting, right?
Definitely, man. And I mean, as you've been sharing that, I've been like going back in time in my mind to think, when did I like first get involved in martial arts? What might have triggered it? Like, what was going on, right? So I did a quick search because I know, like in my early years, one of the influences was the Karate Kid, yeah. So I just wanted to see the timeline line on it. So we're gonna reveal our ages here, kind of thing, right? But the Karate Kid came out in 1984, so that would have made me 4 years old. So it would not have been that early. right? So it would have been a little bit further down the line. And I remember I started watching, like consciously watching martial arts when we moved into the current house that we were in there. And I was around the age of seven roughly then at that time, yeah. So I remember that, and I remember my cousins. My cousins told me about Bruce Lee, but my cousin was into martial arts, yeah. And so he used to do, all of us get together and we used to have a bit of a kind of fighty kind of thing going on, right? So I think that was one influence. So that's the self, protecting the self comes into it there, right?
Yeah.
And then I think the other scenario must have been school, like conflict at school with someone, which would have triggered something like that. I'm just trying to remember, and I think I do remember what it was. But yeah, so it's quite interesting because I'm looking back, I did start getting into martial art at a very young age. And when I learned about the Karate Kid, what I found fascinating about it was the whole kind of Mr. Miyagi element of it, right? This kid turns up at this mystical old gentleman, comes out of the blue, and he looks fragile and weak and stuff, and he pulls out these moves and knocks out all these kids that were trying to cause him harm and stuff, right? And you look at it and think, whoa, like what's that about, yeah? And then obviously you've got the amazing Bruce Lee, because you see this character on TV who's just, he doesn't fit the norm at that time, and he's gone out there and he's doing what he's doing. And there's always this element of like honor and justice and doing it for the right reasons. And I think that had a very deep kind of reasoning. So it's come back to the thing about actually preserving the self in that moment, right? And then being able to actually, if you preserve yourself, you're then able to utilize this to potentially help other people as well. So it's quite interesting, right? I mean, do you remember when you were kind of influenced, and what got you influenced? Like,
so my martial arts journey started from a very young age, and it was it started with Bruce Lee movies. I remember me and my brother being very young. My brother only being like 13 months younger than me. So near enough the same age, but dad realized that, if we put on a Bruce Lee movie, we would sit still, and while it was dinner time, and they could just sit there and, spoon feed us easily, whereas otherwise, we wouldn't want to sit still. Bottom line, being mesmerized by Bruce Lee. And the thing is that, it's a journey. So there's more than one thing, but that I would say it was kind of like something that stuck with me. We grew up, I got born in the 70s, early 70s, and, growing up in the 70s and 80s, those times were, there was no political correctness, and there's a lot of racism as well. And just naturally, I just didn't like the injustice, so I stood up for it, and I spoke with my fists rather than my mouth, because I didn't know otherwise, right? And having been spoon-fed Bruce Lee movies, you think that's the way you respond. It's ludicrous, right? But when you're kids, right, and you hit another kid, right, it doesn't really hurt so much, right? But when you get older, a punch really starts to hurt after a while. When you're kids, you're soft and versatile, and you can take it. You're all right. Yeah, you might get hurt and you might cry, but it's not generally it's not as life threatening as when you get older, even though it could be in some given situations. But so yeah, we kind of grew up not only play fighting but fighting as well, which was a kind of testament to the times and the area we lived in and the kind of school we went to. But then we moved to a better area, and that's when the fighting kind of started to subside after a while. And I really had a choice. It was like, am I going to carry on down this path or not? So I decided I'll go down the education path and make something of myself, and that's what I did. And I decided that I wanted to be in the top groups in maths and English and everything while I was doing my GCSEs, because I didn't want to get into fights with these idiots that were provoking trouble for no reason. Right. And simple things like I remember being in a home economics class where we had to bake a cake, and I made this perfect cake, and some idiot comes along and sticks his finger in my cake, right? And it was a 10 out of 10, right? And that was it, man. I just freaking swung at him, and we started going at it. And I was like, "Why did you stuck your you stuck your dirty finger in my cake, right?" And it was the perfect cake I've ever made, right? And I still remember it to this day. And yeah, I just went at him. Art class, I remember doing art, and this idiot came along, and I love my art, honestly. The first thing I ever wanted to do was become a cartoonist. I still practice art in my own time, mainly for myself more than anything else. Uh, being brought up in a traditional Punjabi family, it was like, oh, there's no money in art, so this isn't a viable career. And being a kid, you're susceptible when you kind of like, go with the current, so mother steered me away from that, bless her heart. Maybe that's what that wasn't meant to be. But anyway, so I loved art, and I was really good at art, and me and my brother and my daughter as well, actually, we've one of our accolades is we've been like at the top of the arts class every year that we were at school. So it was at that level that we really loved art. And this idiot comes along and just messes up my painting, right? Just start singing at it, right? That was it. It's like, there was no tolerance. There was no kind of like, okay, all right, well, I could fix that, and and it was just dealing with numpties, right? And I kind of had a zero tolerance of it, and basically it was a lack of self-control, and just being around idiots. And that's when I realized actually this was a time I had to decide that I realized that all of these guys were were heading for all the low or middle groups, in maths and science and English, and I didn't want to be with them because I didn't want to spend the rest of my time fighting with these teenagers. So I put some effort into it and got into all the top groups, and I had nothing to do with them after that. Went to college, went to uni, and so on, right? And that was the end of that. So I guess, consciously started cultivating. And it wasn't until kind of I was 29 that, and I did martial arts from 7 to 11, but it wasn't until I was about 29 that I had a compulsion to learn martial arts. Just 3 months before my firstborn was about to arrive. And it was a calling. I still say to this very day, it was a calling, because I remember just kind of almost like receiving a message saying, you need to find Bruce Lee's martial art and you need to learn it because you've got something to do. And back then I didn't know Bruce Lee had a martial art, let alone go and find it and go and do it. I didn't know it had a name. I didn't know anybody that taught it, because when I was young, I wanted to learn what Bruce was doing, and I ended up in Shotokan karate classes. And I remember distinctively saying to my father, Dad, this doesn't feel like what Bruce is doing. Anyway, so I ended up being compelled and called into doing it. And I guess, cut a long story short, the rest of the history, here I am. An instructor in Bruce Lee's martial art, and I now understand the reason why I was called into this, because it was to help raise human consciousness, help to heal people through martial arts. So that message that I had then was one of the most powerful things that's ever happened to me, a life changer at that moment in time, and I didn't know it. I knew it was something, but I didn't know it. And I remember my wife saying, your timing is lousy. Like she said, a baby's going to be here in 3 months. Do you think, you're going to go practice, a couple of evenings a week? And we were living in Manhattan at the time. Well, I was working in Manhattan and living across the river. And I said, I can't explain this, but I have to do this. I don't even know what it is, but I have to follow this. Are you with me? And I won't do it without your blessing. And she said, okay, you need to go and do it. go and do it. And that was it. So that's how it started. But, a very understanding partner, they say soulmate understands what the soul needs. And she certainly did. And there was also kind of another message that, I needed for myself to help myself through something that was going to happen. And, we did go through a real low at that, following that short period after that, for several years. And I needed it throughout that period as well. So I had to actually use the martial arts to self-cultivate my own self-mastery, and it led on to the self-realization aspect of developing the self and the not self. So and connecting with the not self. So and here we are, all these years later. This is how I got into martial arts. So
wow.
For everybody that's listening or watching, there's two ways that you're going to find the reason you're put on this planet, right? And I really like to, encourage you to, pay careful attention to these 2 points. Number one is through inspiration. Now, this is what happens. You might be inspired by something. You think, oh, wow, this is amazing. I want to do this. And, I could, I feel myself that this is what I was born to do and whatever. Right. But most people that are inspired are comfortable. So they sit on their ass and don't do anything. Right. And they just stay there. I mean, some do move and take action in that direction. Right. But a lot of people don't. I'd say most people don't. So what happens is life gives you a little nudge, right? And you still don't do anything. So life gives you more of a nudge, and you still don't do anything. Life gives you more of a nudge. You still don't do anything. Life gives you more of a nudge. You still don't do anything. Life gives you more of a nudge. You still don't do anything. Then life gives you a real punch, right? And then all of a sudden you start to think, shit, man, what's all this all about? So the second way of moving on to the path, right, that you're meant to be on, is suffering. Okay, inspiration or suffering. You choose, man. You ignore your inspirations, you will end up being reminded, and it will get more severe over time.
That's fascinating, man. I mean, when you're talking about inspiration, I was just remembering that I actually was inspired by my cousin sisters as well. They started doing martial arts. I just remember going back in time then, and when they started doing it, I used to go with them to watch them, and I used to be intrigued by everything that was going on. But yeah, I mean, as soon as the opportunity came, I bounced on it, man. I came down, actually found a club local to me, and then just started learning that. But it's so fascinating to like some of these points you've mentioned. Like there is some underlying thing that happens that brings people into this knowing and knowledge of information. It could be anything, right? Which then can lead you to a point where, because now you have that information, you utilize that information not to be in that situation or scenario, right? Hence the art of fighting without fighting, and the art of no conflict without conflict. I don't know, that didn't work. But
you got it right. The art of no conflict, the art of conflict without conflict, right?
That's the one. Yeah, I said it the other way around.
Yeah, you did. But yeah, I know you meant.
Yeah, so it's a deep one, because it's like you said, it's even that scenario when you say that you're inspired, so something happens and you don't take an action on it, and then something happens to get you to take action on it, right? And that's something that is what we were talking about earlier on, that either somebody shows you or you've seen something, or then I forgot what the other one was. That just slipped my mind. But you're shown it, or then the impact, something happens. Yeah, that's right. So
show or suffer, huh?
Show or suffer. So that's a very interesting one, Lex.
But I mean, the thing that this boils down to is ultimately martial arts is medication, right? Martial arts is about healing, right? And what's it doing is healing to bring you back onto your path. Now, in ancient India and some of the ancient Indian religions, and even Buddhism and Jainism and Hinduism and so on, even Sikhism, right? They talk about Dharma, right? Or the Dharma, right? Dharma means your righteous path. Righteous path doesn't mean you're all high and mighty. It means that you're on the path that you're meant to be on in this lifetime. This is what you're meant to do. If you start to answer your own question, why were you put on this planet? Now, some people don't ask that question yet, so they haven't raised it at the moment. Some people have asked that question when they were children, right? Some people already knew that, all right, and and carry that with them in everything they do. Other people don't get to kind of their middle aged years to start asking that question because they've got all the resources they need to be comfortable, and they're getting bored and now start to ask the question, well, what is life all about? I've got everything that I need, everything that I wanted, everything that I work towards, but I'm not fulfilled, right? I don't feel like I've done anything useful with my life. So there's more to it. Why? Guess what? You're waking up. That calling's happening inside you, and it's saying you haven't fulfilled your dharmic duties yet. You haven't fulfilled the thing that you came here to do yet. You've done everything else. You've made yourself comfortable. You've got all the toys and all the things that you needed to make your life comfortable. Nothing wrong with that. Absolutely fine. Yeah. Right. But you haven't come here. You haven't completed the job you came here to do. Guess what? It's an open end. You need to close that. The only way you're going to close that is to take action towards identifying what it is, realizing that, and then working on it. Right? Only then you're going to find a pure solitude and peace and harmony within yourself. Only then you're going to, when you're at death's door, whether you have a choice or not before that, to ask yourself the question, did I actually fulfill my soul's purpose within this life, right? Where you can answer that question. Some people won't have the choice. They'll get hit by a bus and it'll be instantaneously, right? But other people might have a long life and a long, maybe they'll live to the point where they know when they're going to pass on, and they can ask that question. I know a lot of people that have been questioned, right, close before their death. Is like, have you got any regrets before that in this lifetime? It comes up that I didn't follow my purpose. I didn't follow my true path. I wasn't strong enough. I didn't have enough courage, right? I didn't say what I meant. Therefore, I never meant what I said. And all of these kind of things start to come to surface. I didn't say what I felt to the people that I loved. I didn't tell them how I felt at a moment in time. They didn't express themselves. They didn't express the love and so on, right? Mm-hmm. Again, coming back to love again, right? So you see that the patterns are rhythmic. They all come back to the same point, right? So it's important that that we use martial arts as medication, as a modality to heal, right? Because that's all it is. Martial arts is medication, and we need to learn to use it that way. So when you medicate, you're not hurting somebody; you're healing someone, right? Yeah. In this case, you have to heal yourself first, right? And then when you're healed, you can help others.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. I remember having a conversation with a colleague of mine, and we had a deep conversation around the topic of why do people, because you speak to people and people say something like, I want to help people, I want to help them do this, and you ask them a question like, why do you want to do that? Like, you ask them why, like why, and you keep digging deeper and deeper, and the moment they realize why they're doing what they're doing, as in like, somebody might say, I want to help horses, right? And it might have been big. When they look back into it, they realize that when they were younger, something happened there where, they must have knocked out a horse or something. And they thought, no, I got to, save these horses now or do something like that. So they've dedicated their whole life. And and the horse could be an example for anything, right? So people do that, striving for it, and then one day when they realize why they're doing what they're doing, is the moment when they can think, oh, is this what I was meant to be doing? Or some people even think, hang on, this isn't actually what I'm meant to be doing. I realize why I've been doing it. Now I can go off and do what I really need to be doing, you know? So you get those situations and scenarios as well. And that's that same thing about like, the thing about when you know, then you're choosing not to. So when the person has figured out what their trauma was, what their issue was around a certain topic, they know now, and then they think, okay, now I've got the knowledge of this to whether I want to utilize in this particular way, or am I supposed to be doing it for something else, right? And I think that's like such a interesting dynamic, good or bad, whichever path is taking people there, right? It's interesting for people to know that. So this whole topic about, when you know how to fight, you find a way not to, is just such a fascinating thing, because it is literally the art of fighting without fighting, isn't it?
It is absolutely 100%, 100%. Which is the highest form of expression, right? Is not to do that, and the secret to that is seeing the love in it, knowing that people are fighting for love, right? As the default starting place, and then trying to see where is the love in it. Once you see it, man, it becomes easy to resolve that. It becomes easy to understand. You put yourself in the other person's shoes. And once you start to experience what the other person experiences, then guess what? There's no wrong or right. It's not you against them. It's not I'm right and you're wrong. You can start to have a level conversation, right, that realigns everybody involved in that conversation.
Absolutely, man. And that's what they mean by the truth shall set you free, because in that moment you're honestly expressing yourself. And when you've had that truthful moment with yourself, it will set you free, because you realize why you're doing what you're doing, isn't it?
Absolutely. And they say that everybody's truth is different, because it's their own truth, and that truth is everyone's experience that's happening. So, and if you could do that and get really, really good at it, you can really succeed at building strong relationships and bonds, and succeeding in anything you apply yourself to life, because you start to fundamentally understand human beings and how they operate, and how to connect with them through the highest form. The highest form, or the highest emotion, the highest vibration, love. So again, requires work. So keep working at it, and keep asking those questions. Ask those two simple questions. Where's the love in it? Where's the love in it? Where's the love in it?
Wow. That's amazing, Sifu Lak. Thank you for sharing all of that wisdom. And, if people are interested, that was on page 60 from the amazing book, The Art of Thinking Without Thinking. Now you know why it could be called that. That's an indicator as well, right? So, Lax, so if anybody wants to go check it out, go to martialmindpower.com, search for an Amazon if you want, that's no problem. Check out the website, see everything that we're up to, find all the information, all the podcasts, and if you like it, share it with others. Get other people sharing it with others as well. So before we close off, Lak, is there any last words you want to share?
I think it's really just those key things: is recognizing the love behind people's actions, and asking yourself the question, where is the love in it, right? And once you can see it, once you can feel it, once you can hear it, once you can resonate with it and connect with it, then you'll know instinctively how to dissolve and resolve the situation. And remember, if you're fighting for love, to dissolve it, you have to act through love, and the end result will be love. But it takes practice, and don't expect it to work straight away. It's something that you have to become an embodiment of and get good at, in order to be able to other people to connect and feel it, right? You will eventually get to a point where, when you know how to fight, you find a way not to. You won't even be finding a way. You won't end up in a position to fight in the first place, because you're not attracting that anymore. Right. And again, that's a whole new conversation. But I hope you kind of get the gist on that one. And, with that, onwards and upwards.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Sifu. See you guys next time.